Namaste. Myself, Deepali Patwadkar, and today I will be talking about decolonization. Specifically, decolonization of the education sector. Let me share my screen. Yes. So when I start to talk about decolonization, I must first define what is colonization, and then we move to decolonization. So colonization basically is the rule by European powers. It was the rule of the European nations like the France, British, Italian, Dutch, over various areas throughout the world. Colonization also meant encroachment upon the sacred lands of the natives, suppression of native cultures, and civilization and Christianization of the natives. These are some of the things that colonization means. Obviously, decolonization means everything opposite. So first, overthrowing foreign rule. That is decolonization. Second is reinstating the sacred lands back to the native cultures. So one would think once the foreign rule has been overthrown, the sacred lands, of course, belong to the natives. But if you take a look at maybe some cave temples in India, for example, let's take the example of the Elephanta caves near Mumbai. These caves were occupied by the Portuguese, and the Portuguese army used the sculptures in this temple as targets for practicing shooting. And so much of these beautiful sculptures, they have been destroyed because of this. During the British rule, what happened was all such ruined cave temples, they were taken over by the government. They were taken over by the Archaeological Society. So today, these cave temples or the ruined temples, they are monuments. They are probably art galleries, but they are no longer the sacred places they are to have been. These are the lands, these are the sacred places which belong to the Buddhists, to the Hindus, to the Jains who built them. And the purpose of these cave temples has to be the original purpose. Their purpose is not a museum. Their purpose is not a tourist place. It is a sacred place which has been built for the deities and for the devotees of those deities. So reinstating sacred lands is decolonization, which is not yet happening in India. Promoting native culture, this is also decolonization. So for example, the traditional medical systems, Ayurveda, this has to be promoted. That would be decolonization of India. And because civilization and Christianization of the natives was a part of the colonizing things that were done, returning to the native religion is decolonization. So of these 4 points, we see that India became independent in 1947 and India overthrew the foreign rule, the British rule. So that first step in decolonization has been done, but yet the remaining things, they need to be done. They still need to be done. Why should one decolonize? So here is an example which was given by Rajiv Dixit there are these Solomon Islands, and there is a myth that if the people over there, they want to cut down a tree, they just go to that tree and they say so many negative things to that tree. Slowly, over a couple of days, the tree dies, listening to all the negative things about it, and it falls to the ground. It's not known whether this is true or false, but it drives home the point that if horrid things are said to a tree, it will slowly disintegrate. And this is exactly what colonization did to the native cultures. In India, for more than 200 years, the natives have been bombarded with negative messages like, the skin color, you're brown, you're unworthy, you're uncivilized, unscientific kind of people. So, all such negative things being bombarded at a culture which is as alive as a tree will disintegrate. So we can only imagine the kind of destruction the culture has faced. All of us, we are children of the culture of this soil. And that is why if the culture remains alive, we remain alive. As the saying on the Afghanistan Museum is, it says, if a culture remains alive, nation remains alive. And that is why decolonization is necessary. So I'll take one small part in decolonization in the sector of education. Before we talk about how the British education came to India, we must know what was the status of education in India before the advent of British. Right from the Vedic times, we see that education has been a part of life. The Vedic period defines different sanskars, which are to be, sanskars are basically milestones in life, which are performed at the right time, by the right people, by saying the right words. And we see that of the 16 main sanskar, 3 or 4 are related to education. Vidyarambha is one sanskar, which is done at the age of 4 or 5 years old. This is the time when the child will start studying Vidya Arambha. And the child will start to learn to read and write. Basic mathematics. These are the things that the child will learn for the next 3 to 4 years. So this is the Vidyarambha Sanskar, where the child will sit in the lap of the father or mother and write the first words in a plate of rice. The next sanskar is the Upanayan Sanskar, which takes place at the age of 8. And this is the time when the next education starts. This is the education which goes on up to the graduate degree, so up to the bachelor's degree. And it's about like 12 years it takes for a person to become a snataka, to become a graduate. And this beginning of education is done by the sanskar of Upanayan. At the end of learning, at the end of completing the course, the snatak sanskar or the samavartan sanskar is done, which declares that the student is ready now to work in the real world. So these are the different sanskar which we see right from the times of, right from the Vedic times. We must understand over here that since the Vedic times, education started at the age of 5 or 6, and at the age of 8, the real learning started, which went on for at least 12 years. So there is a 15-year learning time which is given to every child. The Upanishads and the Brahman Grantha from the Vedic literature, they provide us with Guru Shishya Paramparas. They tell us the lineage of Guru and Shishya. And they go back up to 60 Guru and Shishya. So even during the time of when the Vedic literature was being written, even at that time, the education system, as you can see, was in existence for a very long time. There were different types of education systems. There was the homeschooling, where a teacher would come home and teach the small kids to read, to write, to do basic mathematics. Then there were other home schools where the child would learn from parents, grandparents, the art and craft which was practiced in the home. And they would take up the same profession as their parents later on. So that was also homeschooling. There was apprenticeship, where children could attach themselves to some masters, to some guild masters, and they would get on-the-job training. So those were other types of another type of education system. And then there was the Gurukul system as well. So Gurukul system was basically a child will go and live in the ashram of the Guru, and the education was for free, and the student was supposed to do all the work that needs to be done at the Gurukul. So it was like living with your parents, living at home. You do some chores at home, you take some responsibilities, and side by side, you are learning from the Guru. So these were different types of education systems that were up and running and established in India. There were Pathshalas, there were Gurukuls, and there were Vidyapith. And these education systems were available for girls and boys both. And they were available to the children of all religions and castes. This education system of India, it was thriving until the 12th century. After the Islamic onslaught, after so many Vidyapith like the Nalanda Vidyapith, the Vallabhi Vidyapith, these were attacked and destroyed. That was the time when the downfall of higher education in India started. Even though the Vidyapith were completely destroyed, the Pathshalas continued, and they continued well into the late 18th century. So until the time that British arrived in India, the Pathshalas were there. British, they record in that India had thousands of schools when they came. Every village had a school. So this comes from the British records. These British records also tell us about the number of girl students, the number of students by different caste, number of students by different religion, the kind of books that were used in this schools for teaching, the syllabus that was used. We get all this information from the British records themselves. But in the 19th century, as the whole of India came under the British rule, what happened was these Pathshalas were slowly destroyed. And what was introduced was the British education system. Let us see what the British education system was. In Europe, during the times of the Greek civilization, the ancient Greek civilization, it had its own academies and places where people would learn. But after the fall of Greek and the Roman civilization, there was a dark age in Europe. During these dark ages, there are no records of any kind of schools, any type of education system in Europe. Towards the end of 11th century, we see that Pope Gregory VII, he gave an order that cathedral schools need to be created. These cathedral schools were run by local bishops, and their purpose was basically to educate the clergy, to educate priests. Later on, new universities arose from this cathedral schools. One of the examples is the Oxford University. But a major thing that we must understand is that the basis of the European education system comes from religion, comes from Christianity. So, what we see is that the subjects that were taught in these schools included Latin, included grammar, it included theology, law. These were the subjects which were included in these schools. It was only in the early 17th century that subjects like mathematics, geometry, astronomy were included in the school syllabus. Also, this education was basically for boys and those who came from noble families. So those who came from a high class, education was only available to them. In 1691, 20 free schools were created only for poor boys. You will see over here that there is a segregation by class. So higher class boys went to different schools, and lower class poor boys, they went to another school. If we compare this with the Indian scenario, we see that Krishna, the prince, a child of a king, and Sudam, a child of a very poor man, they went to the same school and they were friends. So in the Indian education system, there was no difference made by class or caste. Whereas the European education system had this differentiation. In 1780, Sunday schools were started at church, and the focus of these schools was also to teach Bible. Let us also take a look at the education of women, and we will take a look at the timeline of education of women. As I spoke earlier, the Indian education system, it included girls and boys together. Girls received education even in the 18th century. We have those records available, and there is a very a good book by Dharmapal, and the book is called The Beautiful Tree. It speaks about the Indian education system as a beautiful tree, and that book gives all these records about the number of students studying in various areas, and what were their grades, what were the teachers, what the subjects were taught. All of this is covered in this book. So women were receiving education, girls were receiving education as late as the advent of British. Later on, as these pathshalas broke down and the British schools opened, the British schools were open only for boys, and that is the place where we see that the Indian women were not receiving education. This education of women restarted in 1847. Kali Krishna Girls High School, this was the first school which was established for girls in Kolkata. In 1848, Jagannath Shankar Sheth Girls High School was started in Mumbai. In the same year later, Savitribai Phule, a Bhidewada school was started in Pune. And the next year, Dr. D. Mukherjee's Bethune School was started in Kolkata. This girls' school later on became a college. At the same time, we see in England, the first college for women was started in 1849. And the first batch of matriculated girls came out in 1869 in UK. So you will see that there is not much difference in the timeline of education of women in India and in UK. Few other things about the British education system. As the British education system came from the church, whatever the church had, the same things were applied to the school. So the nuns and the monks in these churches, they had uniforms. It's common across all religions. Like we see Buddhist monks, they wear same kind of clothes, or the sadhus, they will wear same kinds of clothes, or the Jain sadhus, they will wear same kind of clothes. Similarly, the nuns and the monks, they had a typical attire. And because the schools were following the same things, the children also got uniform. So if we want to decolonize education in India, one of the things will be there's no need of uniform. Just the kind of clothes that you wear at home, those will be the same clothes that you will wear at school. So there should be no change in the attire. There is no need of uniform. Another thing is wearing shoes and sandals in schools. In the Western concept is such that if you take a look at the Greek gods and the Roman gods, they all wear shoes and sandals. So even in the temples, if you take a look at the sculpture of Jupiter would be wearing shoes, or Apollo, he would be wearing shoes. In India, that is not the case. In India, everybody leaves the shoes and sandals outside. So in the Devalaya, when the Devata is at home, Devata doesn't wear shoes. Same thing is followed even today. So Indians, they do not wear shoes and sandals at home. And if we apply this everywhere else, that this is a step of decolonization, where shoes and sandals are to be left outside. So there is no need of having same type of shoes. Every child doesn't need to wear same type of shoes to school. So this change in attire is decolonization. Take a look at the names of educational institutes. So these are the names which are used in India even today as well. So there is Montessori, which is a school that uses the Montessori method. It is the name of a person. Or kindergarten. Originally, kindergarten was a daycare facility which was provided for children whose parents were working. And we still use the same name. Kindergarten, lower KG, upper KG, junior KG, senior KG. Or the word school itself, it means a group to whom lectures are given. That is a school. And thus, a convent school means lectures are given by nuns. Or a cathedral school means lectures are given by the clergy. Lectures are given by fathers and priests, so on. Let's take a look at the Indian terms for school. Pathshala. Shala is a hall. For example, Goshala is a place for the cows. Ashwashala is a place where horses are kept. Similarly, Pathshala is a hall which is for doing part, for learning. Pathshala is a hall for learning. Vidyalaya, on the other hand, is a home. It's not one hall. Pathshala is small, one hall is sufficient. Vidyalaya is bigger. Alaya is a home. For example, Himalaya, where which means it's a home of snow, Himalaya, or Devalaya is the home of Devata. Similarly, Vidyalaya is the home of knowledge. So when a child says, I'm going to Vidyalaya to study, it means I'm going to the home of knowledge to study. And then there are these words, Mahavidyalaya, bigger Vidyalaya, which is a college, and Vishwavidyalaya, a university. Another word used for university is Vidyapeeth. Peeth is a seat. So, for example, Jnanapeeth is a seat of wisdom. Vidyapeeth is a seat of knowledge. Shaktipeeth is a seat of power. So, Vidyapeeth is a seat of knowledge, which is a university. Now, if you compare these names, the names of educational institutes in the Indian language and in the English language, you will see that the words in English, they are religious. Convent school, cathedral school, these are religious names, whereas the names in the Indian language, these are secular. They are only related to knowledge. Take an example of the titles that are used in colleges and universities. Rector. Rector originally means a priest who is in charge of certain area. This word is a title in hostels where rector is in charge of the hostel. Or the word professor. Professor is someone who professes. Chancellor is a member of the clergy who acts as a law officer for the bishop. So chancellor is a member of the clergy. Then there is the word principal. So the principal is the head of the school and it means first. So principal means first one, who the first, what do you say? For example, mayor is the first citizen of the city, or president is the first citizen of the country. Similarly, principal is the first person of the school. So that's principal. These are the words and titles used in colleges and universities. Let's take a look at the words which are used in Indic languages. So a principal here is called Acharya. Acharya means children learn from the acharan of that person. Acharya is someone who walks his talk. And so the students, they will learn from his behavior. They will learn from his acharan. This is the meaning of the word principal. Yeah, in the Indian context, Acharya is someone who has a very good conduct. Acharya is a woman principal. Adhyapaka is one who does adhyayan, who teaches. Shikshak is also one who teaches. You will see here that there are words not just for male teachers but also for female teachers. So there is Acharya, Acharya, there is Adhyapaka and Adhyapika, and there is Shikshak and Shikshika. In the English language, there is only professor or a teacher. For example, poet. A male poet is a poet and a female is called poetess. But you don't see such words for teacher. You don't see such word specifically for women in for a professor. So from this we can say that India had included women not only as students but also as teachers since a long time. And then here is one Sanskrit Subhashit which speaks about the qualities that a teacher should have. It says, a good teacher has sadvartana, has a good conduct, good moral conduct. Vidvatta, expertise, scholarship. Adhyapana Kaushalya is able to teach very well and is Shishya Priya, is popular among the students. Such a person is a good teacher. So these are all the qualities which are expected from these acharya and adhyapaka and shikshak. Let's take a look at the words which are there for student and disciple. So the meaning of word disciple is that one who accepts another's thoughts and spreads the doctrines of another. This is what a disciple means. Someone who takes ahead the banner of the teacher. That's a disciple. Let's take a look at the words which are used for students in India. There is chhatra and chhatra, girl students, vidyarthi and vidyarthini, shishya and shishya. I'll take one word in this, which is vidyarthi. The meaning of vidyarthi is someone who yearns for vidya, someone who is in the school, who is coming to the Pathshala only because he or she wants to learn. He is a vidyarthi. And so this definition of vidyarthi doesn't say carrying forward the banner of Guru. No, it is learning vidya. Knowledge is utmost important. And then, just as there is a subhashit for the qualities of a student, there is a subhashit qualities of teacher, there is subhashit for qualities of a student. It says a student should have respect for the Guru, should have good listening skills, shravanam, should have good grasping skills, grahanam, should be able to retain that which has been taught, dharana, and should be able to reflect upon what has been taught to him and reject the false views and take only that which is truth and imbibe knowledge. These are the qualities of a good student. The degrees which are conferred in the British education system, the basic and the first degree is the degree of bachelor. Again, the name over here, bachelor, means a unmarried man. So this degree is only for males. And the meaning of this word is like a young knight who follows the banner of another. So a follower has been created. Bachelor is a follower. Doctor. This degree, it was a title which was first given by the Catholic Church to saints who made a great contribution to theology through their research and study and writing. These are the meanings of these degrees. Let's take a look at the degrees in the Indian context, in the Indian language. So the first degree is the Shastri. That's a bachelor's degree. And Shastri means someone who has learned Shastra. Shastra is science. So Bachelor of Science means a Shastri. Visharad is master. And Vidya Vachaspati is doctor. All these words, they are related to science, they are related to skill, they are related to talent, they are related to Vidya, knowledge. So these are very secular terms. The Indian terms in itself, which are used in education, are secular. The graduation ceremony. In the British system, there is the convocation which takes place. The student wears a gown. Again, this gown is, it comes from a long tradition, European tradition, a Christian tradition, the tradition of church. And the students, they will wear this cap and they will move the tassel from right to left, signifying their transition from student to graduate. This is the graduation ceremony in the British way, the British system. In the Indian system, it is called as a Samavardhan Sanskar. So this is done at the end of education, wherein the teacher, the guru, declares that a person has learned whatever he or she should have learned over there. And this person is called as a Snatak. So Snatak is again a bachelor. So there is a sanskar in which holy water will be sprinkled on the student, and there will be some mantra from the Vedic mantras which will be recited during this time. Another thing which is associated with school is holidays. So the British system has holiday on Sunday. It's a weekly off. The Indian system had 2 days off in a month. So Amavasya and Purnima, these 2 days were called as the Anadhyaya. No studies on these 2 days. Oh, so happy children. So why these 2 days? Because these are the days when there are so many festivals. Most of the festivals, they fall on Purnima or Amavasya or the day after Amavasya on Pratipada. So whether it is Guru Purnima, whether it is Rakhi Purnima, whether it is Vata Purnima, whether it is Kojagiri Purnima, Holi Purnima, so many, every Purnima, there is some festival. And same with like Amavasya or Pratipada. So children had holiday when there was a festival. Similarly, take a look at the summer vacation. Indian children get a summer vacation in April and May. This is the Grishma Rutu. And during this time, there aren't any festivals. If you look at the Indian calendar, most of the festivals are concentrated in the month of Ashwin and Kartik. So if we have to decolonize the vacation for schools, one would give holiday from Navratri to Diwali. And then the children would have ample time to enjoy these festivals. And they will have something to do in their vacations rather than staying at home and saying like, what should I do? So a decolonized Indian school will give holidays in Ashwin and Kartik Mas. Now about the subjects that are taught. The subjects which are taught in colonized schools. Let's take an example of geography. So what do the children learn? They take a look at the map of India and they are told, here, this is Bay of Bengal. The Indian name for Bay of Bengal is Ganga Sagar. It is that Sagar, it is that Samudra in which Ganga Ji empties her waters. Children learn the name of the river is Ganges. The decolonized way is not Ganges, it's Ganga. And not just Ganga, it is Ganga Ji or Ganga Maya. This is the decolonized way of learning geography. Or for example, we learn that there was this Grand Trunk Road which went from Dhaka to Kabul. Or later on, it came to be known as the National Highway number 1. This has always been called as the Uttara Patha. This was the national highway of India since very ancient times. So the decolonized geography would teach about Uttara Patha. Instead of calling it Deccan, the decolonized geography would call it Dakshina Patha, which is the national highway which ran north-south. The colonized way to learn about the bridge between India and Sri Lanka it's called Adam's Bridge. The Indian way is Nala Setu. Setu is the bridge which was built by Nala of Ramayana for Ram and his army to cross the sea and reach Lanka. That was Nala Setu. So the decolonized name would be Nala Setu. And then there are so many cities which have colonized name. For example, Pune, that is a colonized name. If decolonized, it would be Punya Nagari. Today, we learn that India is formed by the boundaries which are called Radcliffe Line and McMahon Line. Even these names, they are not Indian. These lines, they don't follow any natural form. They don't follow a river. They don't follow a mountain range. These are plastic lines. These are unnatural lines. The Indian boundary is the Himalayas, the Hindu Kush, and the seas, the three seas, which is the Ganga Sagar, the Sindhu Sagar, and the Hind Mahasagar. So these are the natural boundaries of India, and this would what come up in a decolonized syllabus of children. There could be other things as well in a decolonized India, like a Hinglas Mata Yatra. Just as we go to Vaishno Devi temple today, people would have gone to Hinglas Yatra, which is in Balochistan. Or there would have been a Buddhist circuit that included Bamiyan caves and those tall statues of Buddha. So this is what a decolonized version of India would be. In mathematics, we learn in the colonized way. We learn of Pythagoras theorem. We learn of Euclid's geometry, Fibonacci series, Newton's. We need learn about Newton. In a decolonized world, we wouldn't learn about Euclid's geometry, but we would learn about the Baudhayan Shulbha Sutra. We would learn about Aryabhat. We would learn about Surya Siddhanta. We would learn from the master who defined zero, who defined positive, negative numbers, who defined the operations on positive and negative numbers, Bhaskaracharya. We would learn calculus not from Newton, but from Madhava. This would be a decolonized mathematics. This is only the top of the iceberg that I'm speaking about. Sciences, even the names of subjects today is colonized names. We use words like medicine, botany, physics, chemistry, astronomy, history, ethics, and moral science. In a decolonized way, we would be learning about Ayurveda. Instead of zoology, we would be learning about Mruga Pakshi Shastra. Mruga is animals, all animals, not just deers, all animals and birds. It would be a Mruga Pakshi Shastra. We would learn about Vaisheshik Sutras, not physics. We would learn chemistry from the books of Nagarjuna. We would learn about history, the history of India, from books like Raj Tarangini and parts of various Puranas. We would learn ethics and moral sciences from Ramayana and Mahabharata. This would be a decolonized way of learning. Mahatma Gandhi, he said this in 1932. He said that after the British came to India, people became more illiterate than they were 100 years ago. So from even Mahatma Gandhi has this view that the British had destroyed the Indian education system, and instead of bringing a better system, there will always be a change. And when we are accepting a change, we must accept something which is better than what we have. We don't accept anything which is less. Even in barter system, that is what is done. One wouldn't give away something which is more valuable for something which is cheap. Here is an example of colonized biodata. This is the biodata which we see daily. A degree of doctor, a PhD from some reputed university abroad, and masters in science somewhere from USA. All these things, even the awards. These are the Western awards. In a decolonized education system, what we would see is Indian degrees like Vidya Vachaspati or Kavya Shastri, Khagol Shastra Visharad, Nyaya Shastra Praveen. These are the kind of degrees we would see in a decolonized India. The awards that would be conferred would be Indian awards. For example, the Vidwan Mani Award, which is conferred by Sri Kanchi Shankaracharya. This award is even given today, but we don't make it a big thing. We don't have this in media, which says like, this year's Vidwan Mani Award has been conferred upon such and such a person. We don't give importance to our own awards, and we keep on looking at the West. This is the colonized mindset. This is the colonized mindset which keeps on looking to the West. So the colonized mindset, this is what we have learned, and this is what we think, that the British brought schools and colleges and universities and basically education system to India. British took the education to the lower caste children, and British started girls' education in India. This is the colonized mindset. A decolonized mindset will know with facts that India had its own educational system right since the Vedic times. And what British did was they brought an end to that system. A decolonized mindset would say that will know that Indian education systems, they cater to all girls and boys irrespective of religion and caste. A colonized education is education in English language, and it is Europe-centric. The sciences, the mathematics, the medicine, the history, everything is Europe-centric. If we are learning chemistry, if we are learning about the structure of atom, we learn how the European scientists went from step A to step B to step C to learn the structure of atom. We don't learn what was happening in India. We don't learn about Karnad Rishi. We don't learn about Vaisheshik Sutra. So every subject, every area is from the European perspective, it's European-centric. In history, we learn about a king, Alexander the Great. For India, Alexander was not great. The Indians do not even record Alexander. Alexander was great, a Greek for the Europe, not for India. In the Indian-centric history, there are other great kings who have had great virtues, and there are so many other things to learn from them. We would learn about Vikramaditya the Great. We would learn about Ashok. We would learn about Shivaji Maharaj. That would be an Indian-centric history. And this decolonized education would be in Bharatiya Bhasha. It will be in an Indian language. And we will be learning Vignan, Ganit, Bhumiti, Khagol Shastra, Ayurved, Itihas, Bhugol, Utkhanan Shastra. We will have our own names for various branches of sciences. With this, I stop over here, and I thank you all for listening to me patiently and for giving me this opportunity to talk about decolonization in this series. Dhanyavad.